It's Brian Preston, the Money Guy.
Megan has a question, and I think she's echoing a sentiment we're getting a lot right now. I've heard you say that trees don't grow to heaven, but you also talk about the stock market being a mountain with a yo-yo, the yo-yo going up the mountain, right? Does that mountain go to heaven, or could we be heading down?
That's a great question.
Isn't
That
it?
is a great question.
So here's something I want you to think about, because I mean, when you hear that you're going to be investing in an index fund, let's talk about what is an index fund, because sometimes we're so busy talking about the tax efficiency, the low cost, and how it whoops up on the active managers by like 80% outperformance if you look at it on a 10-year or greater basis. We kind of can get lost in what the index fund actually is from a structural standpoint. Like if we just take an example of the S&P 500. The S&P 500 is the 500 biggest United States companies. And you're investing in them. And the reason we get excited about it is because I really do believe in accelerating returns. I think human nature is that we want to grow, we want to innovate, and that growth and that innovation actually is something you can profit off of. You can invest in the future and in that ever expanding economy by doing that. But that's a great question that Megan has, is that she's like, does that go to heaven? Mm-hmm. Here's the answer. If you go look at the S&P 500 of 1995 versus the S&P 500 of 2022, you're going to see a different S&P 500. I mean, let's go back to the mid-90s. Jack Welch, GE. GE is, people are calling it a mutual fund why buy a mutual fund? Just buy GE. GE's like a mutual fund because they got financial arm. They got where they're making your appliances. I mean, they were doing all kind of stuff. And everybody, so if you'd have just, there's a tree that didn't grow to heaven. But you know what? The index accounted for that because they kick off as companies and innovation, and that accelerating returns actually works through fulfillment of what it looks like in practice. Companies come and go from the S&P 500. And you see that Kodak and other things, Xerox. You can think about companies, if you went back historically, and be like, these were market leaders. And then they drop from the top 10, and then they eventually fall off of the top 500 of the S&P 500, and then it's a whole new crop. Look at when Tesla got added to the S&P 500, a year and a half, 2 years ago? Maybe it's, a
couple of years ago now.
I mean, it's one of those things. It's constantly replenishing itself. They're shearing the hedges, so you get that fresh, green shoots that's going to be the future. So, no, trees don't grow to heaven, but when you're pruning, you can definitely get the biggest version of the tree that you possibly can.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. The analogy is kind of beautiful right now. I don't know. I wish Daniel was here right now. I'd be like, Daniel, how tall is the tallest tree in the world? I don't know the answer to that, but I imagine it's pretty tall, but it's not as big as the mountains. And you think about the scope and the size of that. When it comes to building wealth and building your portfolio, there are things that can happen that can be trees, individual stocks, individual strategies. But when it comes to building wealth over the long term, it's not a shot straight up. It doesn't just go straight up and down. It is sort of a steady walk. It's a path. It's a journey. But mountains are big, and they go for a long time. I think it's not a perfect analogy, but it is really interesting when you think about when you are making financial decisions. Are you hoping for a tree that's going to shoot straight up, or are you consistently understanding, hey, I'm going to take this journey up this mountain, but I'm going to go up and then I'm going to come down, and I'm going to go up and I'm going to come down. But so long as I'm consistently walking forward, I'm moving to higher and higher and higher ground. The problem with trying to climb the highest tree in the world is if you fall, it's not a good thing. It's not a good thing. A mountain, I'm kind of painting this analogy here.
It's painting a picture.
Is a little bit of a better trajectory over the long term when you think about building your wealth. I think it's a really good question. That's one. I got to noodle on that one a little bit longer because I think that's pretty interesting.
I feel on solid ground, because I think if you're not in a world that humans aren't innovating and expanding, I mean, because remember, I made this joke yesterday when we were doing the 401k presentation. Remote controls. I was the remote control, when I was a kid. I've shared that before. There's a reason bean bags were so popular when I was a kid, is because you stuck your kids on the bean bag, and then their big toes controlled the UHF and the VHF. on the TV. And now look at, what you walk
always
around
talks
with
about
your
his big
phone.
toes.
Well, I mean, what you walk around in your pocket with your smartphone is more powerful than what took us to the moon. I mean, there's just so many things. So I don't want to live in a world where humans aren't trying to grow and become better. And you'd even asked me, you said, Brian, I mean, the internet changed the world, computers, obviously. Is there something right now?
I was like, what do you think the next thing is going to be? What are the interesting things?
Are you kidding me? I mean, there's so many things going on where, between, a lot of them, Elon, is on, between the robots, between the Starlinks and the independence of, you can kind of come off the grid. And there's just so much cool, exciting stuff. And then that's not even getting into medical science. I still think it's a super exciting thing, and innovation and acceleration is still occurring, and you can profit in a good way and be part of the ever growing and expanding economy.